Call the meeting to order. Those willing and able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda with the additions?
So moved.
Is that Katie?
Yep.
Kate, second. Brad, any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda with the additions signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes. We'll move on to visitors, community. Is there anything up? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to consent agenda. We will approve 5.1 through 5.5.6. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Randy?
Second.
Lance? No discussion. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes. Move on to 6, administrative reports. 6.1.1, Jackie Kennedy, review of budget year to date.
This is the first one for fiscal year 20. Look fine, we're at 17%. I'm sorry. Last year we were at 17% at this time also. Took some out of contingency, not a lot. And I also have a budget amendment, but that's coming down.
The new business.
Yep, I'll explain that then.
Okay,
But looks like it's okay. Green light, Lance.
Okay, thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome.
any questions for Jackie? Any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on then. Principals are not here. We'll move on to school board members, negotiations, facility steering and policy committee.
Policy did not meet,
No,
not since last time.
we just have these other
Yes.
policies from
Mhm.
2 months ago.
Okay,
Negotiations met. We've got a tentative agreement, and we're just waiting to hear back on that.
We heard today from the teachers that they have accepted the agreement, so now it'll be, that'll come to the full board next month. I don't know if you want to know roughly what the package was.
Sure.
Financially, it's 2.5% and 2.5% each year for each teacher. And the only other thing, we had some language proposals, clarifications in a couple of areas that needed to be done by statute. We did raise the teacher stipend during subbing for prep hour to $25 from $16, which have been there since probably forever. The extracurricular compensation has been changed, will be changed to be based upon the base salary of the teacher's contract. So a head football coach will get 12% of a starting teacher salary, the base salary that we have, and vice versa for all other activities. It was put together and proposed by the teachers, little counter offering back and forth with the board.
So, okay, say that again now?
All the coaches and extracurricular advisors' pay will be based on a percentage of the base. So if you ever change the base, there'll be automatic increases that go into the coaches, because
Oh,
a
gotcha.
coach's salary never really gets
Mhm.
negotiated, and it just kind of sits there, so
I see what you're
they
saying.
were just, this way you kind of way to keep up. And
Okay.
that was negotiated. We'll get, when we get the information out to you for consideration, you'll see a little bit more on that. And then, I think that was about it. There was no health insurance or any other benefits, so. Had 4 meetings, basically 4 meetings with the teachers, and have come to this tentative agreement, kind of kept within school districts numbers of what they were looking for. So that's kind of roughly where we'll be at. We'll consider it next month.
Any other board members?
Well, the steering, Randy and I were there, Jeff couldn't make it, but we didn't really meet with anybody, we talked on the phone.
Yep.
Talked to them and made a few changes to the design up front, right, Randy? In that open area,
The courtyard area.
the courtyard area, there was a few changes made in there and set the date for the open house, which is October 10th, same night as conferences, from 5 to 7.
Yeah, it'll be an open house in the commons here at the middle school, high school, so we'll get that, start advertising for that, but an opportunity for the community to come in. They'll have the boards with the layouts of the facility and stuff, so.
And ISG and Carl Sanderson will both be here.
Yeah, they'll be here, so people can talk to them directly.
Figured the commons would be a good spot, cause it's right at the connection point.
Yep.
Where the school would be, so.
Give people a visual.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just on another note, I've talked to a couple of superintendents who've recently went out for their bids, Benson and RTR, and both had gotten better bids than anticipated, so things sound good in that area. We still have a few months. We're planning to go out in November, so, but right now, I've been hearing some things from those other school districts who are going out for bids, so.
Okay. Well, I want to back up one moment and thank the J&B for the $335 donation. Jasper's Bible Study Group for the $75 donation, and State Farm Insurance, Michelle Cheeseman, for the $100 donation to the school, $510 again this month. And then, I guess I got one question, well, probably be both of you guys, I was hoping the others were here. With the eventual closing of J&B, what do you guys, do you have things in place for students, and any idea what we could be looking at down the road?
I think that's something I kind of had in my report here, is for attendance and watching what the impact will be. I know that's a significant employer in town with over 140 employees, so could be some things, if they kind of set for this year, we'll just have to watch our enrollment and see where things are at.
But support services, if, kids start struggling.
Yeah, I think we have already, with our wellness centers and our counselors and social workers, I think that it's one of those things that we're kind of keeping an eye on. Visited with both principals a little bit about, as we go along, and we'll see how that plays out, so.
Well, that's good, I'm hoping we're, preemptive instead of trying to catch up in the backside, so.
Well, we're here to support the families during these times also, so hopefully everything works out okay.
Yeah, okay, and we'll move on to 6.3, superintendent.
Enrollment, just so you saw, for this month was down 13. We were a little bit above, or kind of right about where things are at, so, but I do we'll need to watch that enrollment number closely with the J&B news, so, that was there. Start of the year went well. We've kind of been off and running, and of course, it's homecoming week this week, so it's been a good start to the school year and had good reports. Strategic planning, that will begin here in October with some surveying that'll be going on for about a month. That'll be electronic, and community members, staff members, students, be looking for a broad cross-section of the community to fill out that survey. And then we'll have November 7th, we're slated for some listening sessions. And then there will be a planning committee meeting that will have three meetings, the 19th of November, the 3rd of December, and then the 16th of December. And the plan is to have by January 6th a plan ready for the school board at our organizational meeting in January, so.
Do we know what time those meetings are?
think I have them down, yes, I didn't
Okay.
write them
Oh,
in
okay.
my notes here, but they've all been established.
Okay.
The planning committee has not been established, we will need to have, we're looking for a group of 25 to 40 people to serve on that. So it'll be much like our task force that we had for the facilities, so. And again, parents, teachers, students, school board, of course, will be their administration, so. That's where we'll be at there, so. That's all I have for this one.
Okay, then we'll move on to old business. We're gonna combine 7.1 and 7.2, policy, second reading of policy 419 and 526. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Randy and Marcy, which one do you want second?
I'll take it.
Okay, any discussion?
Just to remind, the tobacco-free environment has been in place for a long time. This policy now has upgraded to the electronic delivery devices, so I think you hear a lot about vaping today, and this just gets us in line there. I do want to add that the Pipestone Coalition has a presentation that they're looking to provide to parents on vaping and all of the devices and things to look for. So I think they're planning to have one of those on a parent-teacher conference night too. So we'll look to advertise that, but I think that'll fit in, and parents really need to be vigilant with some of this stuff. It's, I think everybody knows how bad that stuff is.
I think
so.
that's a really good idea, actually.
And then the second policy we have tonight on this second reading is on hazing, which is just one that's been in place for a long time, but just want to make sure that we don't allow and remind everybody hazing is not an acceptable practice. With the exception of the green hand procedure, I believe that's not, the green hand is not hazing, correct?
No,
No.
it means new.
Okay, all right. There was a question on that, and we wanted to just make sure that was clear to everybody that.
Sure, yep.
That the FFA initiation is not hazing.
It is not.
No.
Okay. Any further discussion on them two policies? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving 7.1 and 7.2 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes. 8.1, approved payment of regular bills. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Brad, I'll second. Are there any questions? Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor to approve payment of regular bills signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. 8.2, approved treasurer's report for September 30, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Lance, second? I'll second it. Are there any questions on?
I just want to add, I think Jackie and I have talked, starting next month, we'll look at a report probably for all the bond proceeds.
Bond proceeds, and then I'll give you a list of the expenditures that have come out of the bond proceeds to date and the interest. And then eventually when Cross Anderson starts doing their thing, they should have books that have that all in there, but until that time, I'll come up with something to
But I
you
think I
guys.
just want to start getting used to, there'll be a little addition in here, probably just for the bond proceeds. So you'll get some updates every month on what's going, on the transactions that are going on there. But we got it, but Jackie wants to take some time and figure out how to best present that to you,
Okay.
because it's a lot.
It's okay now. I gotta figure it out.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the treasurer's report for September 30, 2019 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes. 8.3, National FFA trip. Heidi.
Good evening. We have a packed National FFA convention this year. We have 4 students that are going to be competing in the food science CDE, all of which are in college and are going to be flying down and competing then. We have our livestock team that is going to be traveling down separate from myself and the rest of the delegates because they have a few judging practices lined up on the way to Indianapolis. And then myself and 7 members are going to be riding on the regional charter bus. One of those students is also going to be competing in an individual event, which is the dairy handling event. So we have a chaperone going with, we actually have 2 chaperones and a coach, 2 total going with the food science team. As of now, 1 coach for the livestock team and then myself with the delegates riding on the region bus. And we are asking permission to go on the overnight trip for to Indianapolis, along with helping to pay for the registration fee of the actual convention and a substitute teacher for myself.
How many total students are going?
Total students are 15, and then 16 with myself.
15 total students, so does that 15 include the 4 that are in college, or is that just?
Yep, that includes the 4 in college.
So then there's 11 PAS.
Yes.
Okay.
The FFA members will pay for their meals and the cost of the hotel rooms that they're splitting amongst ourselves and the rest of the chapters in our region, and as well as the travel for the bus cost.
Do you guys use that money from the ribbon auction?
We do.
Yes, some of it?
We are able to get that for like qualifying teams. So the livestock team, I put that request in this summer. The food science one I did when school started, and I believe that I submitted one for the individual as well.
Okay.
I don't know what, I'm going to the meeting on Wednesday for that to figure out how much we'll get for that.
Okay.
So,
That's good.
Nice.
There's
Yeah.
lots there, I think.
yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Heidi? No other questions? Okay, and, do we have a first and second on that?
No.
Okay, then I need a, approval for the
So
national
moved.
FFA trip. Lance and Brad, and first and a second. We have discussion, all those in favor of approving the national FFA trip, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, then we're going to move on to 8.4 through 8.18. These are policies that have been looked at and are recommended to approve on a single reading. Kevin, did you want to talk about it?
Yep. Just, these were reviewed by the policy committee. They reviewed, this was half, the second half. If you remember last month, you approved the other half. This was the other half of the policies. They have no real substantive changes in them, but some of them haven't been reviewed for 15 years or so, and some have had legal statutory updates. So the policy committee recommends 1 reading and approval of these policies. I don't know if you want me to go through them or
Just let them
all right, policy 101 is the legal status of the school district. Policy 203 is the operation of the school board, what are your governing rules? Policy 211 is criminal or civil action against a school board member, employee, or student. Policy 304 is in regards to the superintendent's contract duties and evaluation. Policy 306 is the administrator code of ethics. Policy 404 is the employee background checks policy. Policy 406 is public and private personnel data. Policy 505 is in regards to distribution of non-school sponsored materials on school premises by students and employees. Policy 509 is enrollment of non-resident students. Policy 510 is regarding school activities. Policy 518 is DNR, DNI orders. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but that policy states that we don't have to follow a DNR. That's a hospital, it's on, we're just gonna call an ambulance and get someone in here. So that's our policy, and that's very clear, so if that ever happens. Policy 527 is student use and parking of motor vehicles, patrols, inspections, and searches. Policy 529 is staff notification of violent behavior by students. And Policy 532 is regarding the use of peace officers and crisis teams to remove students with IEPs from school grounds. And Policy 611 is in regards to homeschooling. And like I said, no substantial changes to any of them. They've been in place, nothing new, so.
Okay. All those in favor of approving, what's that? We need a motion? Oh, okay.
So moved.
Brad?
Second.
Randy? Okay, all those in favor of approving 8.4 through 8.18 signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, now, we are at a point where we're gonna get into some lengthy discussions with the student achievement report and the levy limitation. Does the board wish to take the time and go and watch coronation? Or do we wanna just continue on?
That's fine.
I'm gonna leave, so.
I'm fine with continuing.
Continuing?
Yep.
Okay, then we'll move on.
Lance is gonna leave.
Yep.
That's fine.
You're at 7:30.
At 7:30.
Okay, then we will move on to 8.19, the student achievement report. Melanie?
All right, just making sure it works up there. Okay,
There we go.
good deal. And it all loaded. Excellent. Well, thank you for taking the time to listen and learn and ask questions about our student data. We could have done this earlier, but we couldn't because public was present. So now we're able to do this. The first part we're going to look at is our North Star report. To remind you, last year was the first year that the Minnesota Department of Ed used the North Star report. So this year what I've done is I've pulled last year's and this year's. So when we're able to look, this data reflects students who have met or exceeded the standards on state tests. And it reflects all students included in the identification counts. A little bit later, you're gonna see our district versus the state, and some of the data numbers are different because identification doesn't include every student, where our numbers includes every student. So when we look here, in comparison, the light colored column is from 2018, and the dark colored column is this year, 2019. In math, we went down. In reading, we were able to make a gain. This is the bright shining star of our North Star report this year, is our reading and achievement. Stage 1 also includes the progress toward English language proficiency. And last year we had a high index rating, and an index rating is the average progress toward their target. And it's the average amount of progress that English language learners made toward their individual goals on a test of English language proficiency. So this is more of an individual type goal. Did they make the progress, the average amount progress toward or not? So we went down about 19-ish% in that index. However, in our students, our English language students who met their target and who met or went past their target, we went up about a percentage point. For stage 2 of the North Star report, it includes graduation. And our graduation rate is looked at in 2 different aspects. The 4-year graduation rate, which would have been the class of 2018, and the 7-year graduation rate, which is the class of 2015. Our 4-year graduation rate went down from 82.7 to 76.19. And our 7-year graduation rate actually went up about 0.05%. So that's the overtime example. Stage 2 also includes our academic progress. Now, this has 3 separate areas in both math and reading. And the first area is This measures whether students' achievement levels have been improved or maintained. So the first column is did the achievement level decrease or did it stay at the does not meet rate? And this is for math. And last year's scores, we were much higher in this area. We were at 43%. And this year, for 2019, this is a good column to go down in. We went down to about 40%. It is good to not decrease an achievement level, and it is good to not stay in the does not meet. We want students to get out of the does not meet. Also in our math, our achievement level maintained, so the middle two columns. Last year we had about 42% who maintained their achievement rate, and this year we had 44.6% who maintained. The achievement level improved rate is the one that we want to be the highest. And in last year, we had about 13.7%. This year, we had 14.87. So if we can continue that achieving, going from does not meet to partially meets, or partially meets to meets, or meets to exceeds, that's what achieving achievement level means. When we look at reading, the achievement level decreased or did not, or stayed at the does not meets. The previous year, we were at about, yes, you guys have much better eyeballs than I do. Thank you for that.
Oh.
And then this past year, that went down to about 32%. That is a good decrease, and we want to continue to see that decrease. The achievement level maintained in reading, we had about 43% who maintained their achievement level last year, and this year we went up to about 46%. And then for the achievement level improving in reading, we went from 17%, almost 18%, to 21.3%. So those are, those last two are, again, our bright shining spots in our North Star report for our reading. Consistent attendance, this reflects, and I'm looking at my notes here, this is a measure of students who attend more than 90% of the time they are enrolled. So last year we had about 89.32% in the consistent attendance rate. This year we have about 85%.
Is that like, so what grade levels is this?
All.
Like from kindergarten to, okay.
Yep. So when we think of what last winter brought us, and if
Yeah.
kids couldn't get to school, that could have played a role here too.
What part would the varying enrollment numbers attribute to that?
So they take your base enrollment wherever you're at the time that the North Star report is created. So if your enrollment varies throughout the year, it's not going to reflect it because they're just taking the base at the end. So when I look at the North Star report, they have, what are your number, and then what was your average to get your rate. So they essentially take the number of days times the number of students to get this percentage. So a fluctuation, we're not going to see that in here. When we look at our district view, this is where things might change a little bit. When we look, this is with Pipestone being the limey green and the state being the darker green. When we look at our reading proficiency for 2019, we were at 55.4%, and the state was at 59%. Stones throw distance, but we'd like to be above that.
Well, I've always said that if you're within 5 points of the state, you're really in the state average range. So I think in reading, we've kind of kept bumping up here and we're getting closer, so, but that's a pretty reasonable number there.
I think the efforts that have been made in reading, the alignment to the standards, ensuring having non-negotiables for the instruction of reading, have really played a role, and it takes time. I mean, this is year 3 of having those standards fully aligned, and year 2 of having non-negotiables. You can see that those
small steps are going to have small gains over time that will build and compound. When we look at our math, PAS had a 41.2% proficiency rate, and the state had 54.9% proficiency rate. Math is continuing to be our area of concern, and a lot of our planning from last school year, along with our achievement and integration planning, will play a role in getting that number to move. It's down there, and it's gonna take a little time to get it to go, just like the reading took a little bit to go.
What qualifies you as being proficient?
Being proficient is you are meeting the standards at your grade level.
This is strictly the MCA test,
Mhm.
and that is taken from grades 3 through 8, and then
And
the high
10.
school.
So
Yep.
the
So-
state is 59%.
And this is
Minnesota,
all of our,
all kids.
This is all of our 3rd through 8th graders
Okay.
who tested.
As a whole.
as a
You'll get
whole.
to
We're
see
gonna break down the grades for you too.
Okay.
so
by
you'll see
grades
that.
here.
Do you know where some of our like peers? in
Our
the
locals?
area?
Yes, we have a slide in just 2 slides.
Okay.
Good job, Brad. Yes. All right. So when we look at our state and district proficiency trend, you're going to notice that nice uptick from 2018 to 2019 in reading. And our math continually follows and continually has a large gap between the state. If you're looking at our reading, we're closing that gap between the state and our achievement. Where math, we continually, we're kind of following it parallel, but we've gone down a little bit further than we had in 2 years ago. So,
So what do you think from 13 to 19 has changed throughout the state to bring the whole state?
Mhm.
the MCA 3. The MCA 3 is truly aligned to the Minnesota standards, and not a lot of school districts have taken the time and efforts to fully align to those standards and teach those standards. That is what takes that time, and it is a huge difference. Think about like what most first graders learn. They're learning that in kindergarten. Everything got brought down a level so that students are needing to know a lot more to begin with. And that's how our making sure our kids are ready for kindergarten is going to help us along the way so we can combat this from the bottom. It's too difficult to combat from the top.
Yeah.
So ours is eventually gonna meet in the middle essentially. But they raised the rigor and we haven't kept up with it. And that's what, when I sat down last year with the math department, they had never sat down with the standards. Never.
Right. And this doesn't make it justify it or anything.
No.
But it's the whole state.
It's the whole state.
evidently has
Mhm.
not taken the time, like you said.
Yep.
So would we have a plan if, let's say, the standards would just change again? To get in front of it if like,
Yep.
so we'd be
So-
sitting down and,
For example, our science standards will be changing in time. They usually give us a 5-year plan of when they're going to introduce it, when they're gonna go across the state and train on it, when it should be rolling out into certain parts of your grade levels. For example, our music standards, our fine arts standards, music, art, theater, dance, all of those standards got rewritten last year. We don't have to fully implement them until the first year in our new building. So they give you a stair step, and when we can get on the front end of that and participate in those trainings, participate in those group meetings that they ask anyone across the state, they open it up to anyone. And whenever I receive those emails, I send those out to our staff, math staff, science staff, whomever it belongs to, so that they have the opportunity, if they would so choose, to participate in that. Because it's not just the state who makes the decisions, it is a huge group of teachers who make the decisions at the state level. Now, this gets to Brad's question. So today from MREA, we were able, Mr. Enerson and I were able to access some information about just our southwest corner of the state. And we looked at a 3 to 5 year trend. For us, it was a 3 year. For them, it was a 5 year. But for the 3 years that we were able to follow the trend for, with Mr. Enerson and I having knowledge of what the scores were, the Southwest region in reading grew 2 percentage points. Pipestone grew 1.7. So we're there. We are growing just in reading, just like our neighbors are. In the 2019 proficiency, the Southwest region was 57%. Pipestone was 56.6%. Again, we're right there with our neighbors. Math, the Southwest region had a 2% decrease. Pipestone had a 6.4% decrease.
So what do you think makes it such a big decrease? I mean, that's quite.
So I can go back in time to when the flexible learning year was being had and what happened with those school districts who participated in the flexible learning year. They aligned their standards then. They were doing common assessments then. A lot of our surrounding area participated in that flexible learning year, and they are about 10 years ahead of us in our math implementation of the standards. When we look at our 2019 proficiency, the Southwest region had 52% proficiency and Pipestone had 41.8%. We have a deficit, and everything that we're doing with our achievement and integration funding, having a math specialist, having math interventionist, making sure that students get what they need is helpful. We'll get to that, sorry. He's doing this to me, I'm like, okay. So, grade level view, 3rd grade. So this was last year's 3rd graders, the class of 2028. This is this class as a whole. In reading, they were at about 44%. The state was at about 55%. Math, our students were at 50%. The state was at 65% in 3rd grade. So this is that grade level. The next slide is 3rd grade for the last 7 years. So this isn't just one class, this is all 3rd graders for the past 7 years. And when we look at our trend, we were about kissing the state average in 2017. And then we started a dip down in reading. And then math, we have lots of jagged lines. And Mr. Erdman is shaking his head. Jagged lines are not good. That means there's been drastic differences. You like change. I mean, change is good, but you want it to be either slow one way or slow the other way. So math has gone down as well this past school year. They were maintaining between 2017 and 2018, but last year took a turn.
So with that jagged line, is it hard to pinpoint what's really?
When 2014 happened, that was the MCA 3s. 2015, sorry, when we went down. The difference between 2014 and 2015 is the MCA 3s.
Watch as we go through all the grades, you'll see the reading is flatter, you know?
Mm-hmm. Less jagged.
And the math, you're gonna, and watch the up and downs with the math.
You know, I question too, like, how much does it have to do with teacher turnover and new teachers coming in? And I'm not saying that, you know, old versus new are better or not better, but, you know, your first year teacher, you're not as good as you are your 5th year teacher, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, just like anybody's job. So, like, have we ever looked at that? Are the same
That's
kids
why we have
getting new
instructional
teachers?
coaches.
But, you know, are the same kids getting those new teachers? Like, I mean, and I'm not saying,
Right.
because you can't,
I
not all of them are the
I
same.
have not taken the time to look at see if one particular group of kids have gotten the new teacher every year.
Right.
The content of our class levels changes enough each year that I know I can almost say without a doubt that there are very few kids who have always gotten
Right.
the new teacher at a grade level. For this year, the only new teacher we have is at kindergarten. Last year, the only new teacher we had at the brand new teacher was in 3rd grade at Hill. You know, so, but then you also look that those grade levels need to function as teams.
Right.
And that no part of the team should be, left hanging if you're really functioning as a team. And that's a concept our staff aren't there yet. They're getting there.
Mhm.
And over time, you can see that, okay, yep, there's small wins, but there's still some wins.
So so the way we're going towards should eliminate some of that.
Mhm.
Even if you did have a teacher right out of school, it should help.
Right,
close
and
that.
having our instructional coaching program, all of our first-year teachers, this year we have 2, but we also have brand-new teachers.
Right.
But we also have the teachers who are new to our district.
Mhm.
And those staff members get 180 minutes a month with Joanne Alverson is our instructional coach for our new teachers this year. And they have every opportunity to grow at a high rate and be as good as they can be.
So has anybody throughout the state ever pegged this to your socio-economic happenings within the communities? Such as, okay, now you have JP closing, would that be a driving force of changing your numbers? You have a boom in something where they have a huge influx of, say, immigrants or something, that is also gonna change your numbers. They're gonna fluctuate based off of your socioeconomic happenings within the district as well.
And when we look at our area, we have 50% plus free and reduced. Laverne has 30%.
Right.
That's 20%. That we have 20% of our parents who may not have what other parents have. Go ahead,
Answer
Mr.
your
Enerson.
Question, Jeff, is yes. I mean, MRA has some wonderful charts and shows some of the great disparities there are. They really focus on rural and metro and some of the inequities there, but there's also inequities in districts, in rural districts based on, and that's where when we get to truth of taxation, I have some of those charts that show some of those things and where we're at too,
Mhm.
so.
When we look at our 4th grade class from last year, our class of 2027, they shot so far over the state average, it was amazing. And for, so 2018 is when they were 3rd graders, so they were below the state average, and they went above the state average far in 2019. Math, their gap isn't as wide as most grade levels, and they are perfectly parallel with the state. When we look at the 4th grade trends, I only have these trends. Where did the 4th grade trend go?
Okay, I'll hit it.
You hit it.
I was gonna say.
Where did the 4th grade trend go? We had the 4th grade trend. Give me a moment.
This is our good slides.
Hang on. These are even our good slides. You're exactly right.
Do they
Can
always
you-
test in the same order? Like, do they always test math, or reading's always first, and a few days later is math, or do they change them up, or?
We usually test reading first
Mhm.
because math, they want to be able to get through, have a few more weeks
Okay.
to
But
be able
it's
to address
weeks
all their
apart?
standards.
Mhm.
Yes. So, Mr. Enerson, I am going to add, so you're gonna have to open it or refresh it. Not yet. And it's not gonna be pretty, you guys. I'm just gonna copy and paste. This is called data on the fly.
Oh, we had it this way.
I know, where did it go? Who got click happy?
I wasn't touching anything.
Wasn't me.
It's okay, I'm not blaming anyone. This is why we have this. Go ahead and refresh.
Corey was in the room. How do I do that?
If you go out of present mode
Threw Corey under the bus.
and then go up at the top line next to the house, click that. And then go back to present mode and go to next slide, or I can. There we go.
Yeah, this is one we didn't wanna lose.
I know, we did not want to lose this one. Okay, so when we look at our fourth grade trend from 2017, 2018, 2019, fourth grade reading has been above the state level. Math, they were at the state level in 2017. 2018, they went tiny bit below, and then this year they're about 4 percentage points below. So over time, fourth grade has been kicking some good stuff, and they're making it happen.
You like to see when it goes up that it stays there.
Yes.
And that's a good sign. That means that something's going well there, so.
So do we take this into account? I know, sometimes we have a tendency of moving teachers around.
Mm-hmm.
Do we take into account these tests and when they're doing really good and getting good stats in a certain area, that we mentally make a note and don't move them?
And we've moved some because they've had such great results at their level. Not necessarily that's reflected in any MCA type data, but because they've had great results. Like this year, for example, we're looping with one teacher who went from first grade and is with the same kids in second grade. Because she came from second grade, went to first grade, and now we're looping her back to second grade because she had such great results last year with those kids. And you can already see the difference when from that classroom to the other classrooms at their grade level. It matters once you know those kids. This is our last year's fifth graders, the class of 2026. They were right next to the state in reading. In 2018 in math, they were right next to the state. This year they took a drop down to about 35%. So when we look at the fifth grade trend, you see a lot of those ups and downs.
Good trend in reading.
But a very good trend in reading. They've been above the state for the past 2 years.
2 grades in a row.
We're working to figure out that.
Well, when you go back and look, I mean, you've got 3 years there, so, I mean, it all builds upon itself.
Yep.
And the whole goal is to have our children reading at third grade level by the end of third grade. If we have that we know that has a very positive impact for the rest of the way through their career, so.
Most definitely.
But you really start to see the up and down in math now.
Then when we look at last year's sixth grade, class of 2025, they have been above the state in reading since 2017. They followed the state a little bit with a little decline this year, but they're still above the state. Math, they are right at the state level this year. Notice how the state went down? Yep. And our sixth graders went up to meet them. So that's very promising. Very. When we look at the sixth grade trend, look at that upward trend in reading, how nice and gradual that has been. Until now, 2018, they had a nice almost 12-point jump. Math, lots of this, up and down. We're working to understand that. Because there's not been a lot of body change, position change. So it'll be interesting. The class of 2024, last year's seventh graders, they stayed about the same in reading. The state went down in reading, so the gap is closing with thanks to the state. And math, the gap is almost 20 percentage points wide, if not more, because last year's dipped to like 29%.
So when you look at these where they're really declined, were there a lot of standards that weren't being taught? I mean, is it that they just weren't being taught those standards, or the way they were being taught them, or, I mean, what do you think is?
So what we discovered last year in seventh grade and in eighth grade is that there was one group of students who were proficient, with maybe 2 who were proficient outside of that group. And that group was our accelerated math. they were being taught different standards than the rest of the 7th grade. So this year, we made the change that all students will be taught what the 7th grade accelerated is. And the same thing with 8th grade. Some people may question, well, are there opportunities for, going higher? There's still differentiation. Students will be taught at the level that, teachers will meet them where they're at and take them as far as they can go, whatever level they are at. But true differentiation in our math right now will start in 9th grade. Our students need stronger foundation before they're able to differentiate, to make that difference better in math. I was so compelled to figure out what was going on that I took the time to take the class lists and take the scores and yeah, all but 2 in 7th grade were in accelerated math.
It was sobering, actually, when you look 100%.
Math.
And in the other math courses, it was 2 students.
2 students in 7th
students
grade.
out of 70 met the standards.
Because we have 100 kids, about 100 kids, a little over 100 kids in 7th grade.
7th grade accelerated math is simply 8th grade math. They
Right.
moved it down a year. And 8th grade accelerated is algebra 1. And what is the 8th grade standards?
Algebra 1.
And the other 8th graders were getting what we used to have as 8th grade math, so
It was,
they weren't being taught the same things, and it was just very, very clear. So-
and our math department worked in June, during our June days, to take all of the standards. And so like Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, those standards live in the same column. And what we discovered remember when we had all the standards across the wall here? What we discovered is Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 basically taught the same standards over and over. So we split, like, Algebra 1 has to be different than Algebra 2. You may have to review a little bit, but making that differentiation that you're responsible for these standards and you're responsible for these standards in this course. Now, when are we gonna see those results? I am not sure, because it's gonna take a bit for those kids to catch up to then be able to show us those results. But I'm hopeful that when we're teaching, I'm more than hopeful. I'm positive that when we're teaching the standards that are being assessed, that we will do much better.
Right.
So. The 7th grade trend in reading, they had a nice dip up this year. They still have about 5 percentage points, like we saw earlier, difference between the state as a trend. And then the jagged downward 7th grade trend, it's scary.
It is.
So even before the MCA 3 change, we were still below.
Mm-hmm. The 8th grade class of 2023, they made a nice uptick from their 7th grade in 2018. And math, they stayed about the same. So they're leveling out with the hopes of going north. We will see where that grade level ends up. So now those 8th graders won't be tested in math again until they're in 11th grade. So they're gonna have some lag time, so we won't be able to watch these kids next year. And then the 8th grade trend, the trend in reading shows just a slight dip down, and again, that trend stays. Just like the 8th grade class trend, the trend stays where it's at in math. So the class of 2021 are sophomores last year, and the class of 2020 are juniors. The sophomores take reading. They made a nice uptick for reading. They're getting closer to the state average. In math, we pretty much parallel the state in their dip down. However, we are about 10 percentage points below the state in that grade level. When we look at the trend over time, the 10th graders were trending down a little bit. They had stayed, 2015 they went up a little bit to 2016, and then 2017 they went down, 2018 they went down a little bit more, and now they've gone up about 7 percentage points. Math has a lot of jagged edges, but at least this jagged edge is going up. And hopefully it will continue that high school trend. Any lingering questions?
So what is a good expectation about how many years it will take to see? I mean, is it 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? I mean, what?
Any change, like when we look at our first graders who were the first preschool to have, no waiting list, we're gonna see that when they're in third grade. These changes with changes to what is being taught at a grade level, sometimes we're gonna see when major changes like that are made, the scores actually go down before they go back up. Because that's where the teachers are understanding and learning, and this is their first time teaching that. So I can't say, but most change
Well, after
takes
that,
3 to 5
I mean,
years.
Look what you see in fourth, fifth, sixth
Right.
grade.
Yeah.
I mean, we're above the state average in those grades in reading. So that's a real positive. I mean, we're where we wanna be. We just wanna keep getting stronger. And
Right, we want that to
still know there's
maintain.
rooms to, so all of those go on. And I think
Mm-hmm.
with what we're doing with some of the curriculum things and now the focus on math with the
Math specialist, who
We're-
works with staff.
that'll really help us, and we would hope to see some change. I mean, it's gonna be
At least
change for
leveling.
the staff too, but, boy, in 3 years, what will we see? And then, everybody keeps coming up, and all those strong fourth, fifth, and sixth grade scores continue to come
We have good
through.
fuel coming.
Yeah.
Now we need to maintain and extend that fuel.
Well, and I know our goal is to be at the state average, but, I mean, just quickly to go back to the very beginning, I mean, the state average is 60% in reading.
I hope we're better than 60.
Yeah.
I hope so, too.
60%
I feel like that's-
I mean, really, we really would love to see that be 80 to 90%. Every kid coming out of here has got the skills. And it isn't that, and I have to always reinforce that, it's not that kids can't read or do
Right.
math, it's just a specific set of standards that they have to test against, so it isn't that kids aren't, they're illiterate. I mean, they can read and they can do their math, and I mean, we have kids that do well in college and move on, but it's just, but these standards, I've asked teachers, do they not make sense? Is there anything in here that doesn't make sense that kids shouldn't do? And you don't usually hear that. Now, there are a few things that we kind of roll our eyes at, but, we'll be
With
professional
anything,
and
right.
handle it, but.
But you also need to feel reassured that in the fall, the winter, and the spring, we give our students a formative assessment called the FastBridge assessment. We just wrapped up our fall assessment. Last year in the spring, I was able to make a direct correlation. I just looked at fifth grade for the sake that we needed to help figure out summer school, who would go, who wouldn't. And every kid who does not meet was high risk or some risk on FAST. Every kid. So this Wednesday, our first PLC will be spent learning about our new benchmark reports. So every grade level, every one of their benchmarks that's assessed, they are receiving a report that is new, it's improved, and I'm very pleased with the improvements that they've made. They list the benchmark and they list if your students are meeting, if your students are does not meeting, so that you can, as a grade level team, look at those benchmarks and say, oh, but we spent a ton of time on that. Well, but how did you spend time and when did you spend time? Do we need to shift when that concept is taught and how it's taught? So we'll spend time in that, plus we will take the grade level FAST assessments so that staff can meet as a team, look at the needs that are there, because then next week we have grade level meetings with each of the elementary grade levels, and the middle school will happen. We just have to schedule them so that we can determine who will be receiving support from our math interventionist. So that, when we look at the whole, where does it make sense? Because our achievement and integration funding is for achievement. So are we gonna look at the bottom 5%? Where are we gonna spend our time with our math interventionist? So we have a lot of work in front of us, but you guys, it is so good to be able to see things moving and staff being, yeah, we're giving this assessment, are we ever gonna look at this data? Elementary has looked at the data the past 3 years. We're getting the middle school to be more data proficient and data sound, but PLC time is great for that. So everyone can hear the whole picture and understand, and then be able to focus in on the areas that apply to them.
I love data.
I know. When I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning looking at data, I have smiles from ear to ear.
Overall, when you look at our, the big district data, you see, you don't see as much movement, but it's refreshing to go in and look at the grade levels and see some of the really good things that are happening. So
Yeah.
we're making some good strides in reading, keep moving there, and then we put a lot of energy into math here.
And we're doing the right work. It's just, it takes that time to make that right work stick and that right work to have the results that we all want and know that our students are able to achieve.
Well, it's always hard as these kids move forward, they're always typically getting a different teacher. Like you said, where this one dropped back and now has moved forward, it is making a huge difference.
I'm so excited to watch that grade level this year and just see that impact. I mean, behavior, reading ability, class routines. I mean, those kids had a routine down at the end of the first week because it hadn't changed from the previous year. I mean, think of all the time that gets lost in creating a routine. It takes good 3-4 weeks for those elementary routines to really stick. So.
Any further questions for Melanie? None? Okay, we'll move on. 8.20, MSBA Delegate Assembly Recommendations. Kevin, you want to address this one?
Yes. The School Board Association, of course, is set to have their delegate assembly.
Delegate.
Did I, jeepers, I don't sorry. And so, school districts are really asked, are there anything that you would like them to consider? So I had some ideas that I put down for the board to maybe just talk about. You don't have to do anything tonight. If there's other ideas, we most certainly can add them and discuss them also. But when they do ask for what are you recommending, this is the School Board Association, so they like to know if the school board endorses this. So really, it's about, as a group, the school board saying, let's put these things forward to the delegate assembly. So, want me to just start with?
Yes.
Okay, first one was levy authority equal to the metro intermediates. This is a discussion that's happening quite a bit in outstate Minnesota. We have facilities like Blue Mound and these level 4 placements for special ed that our kids have to go to. In the metro area, they have intermediate districts, which are like the service co-op special ed. And they actually, school districts have $65 per pupil levy authority through their lease levy just for those facilities and those things. And metro and outstate schools don't have that. And it's like, why? And this is just where you get into the funding inequities. So one of the things that MREA is going to be asking for is that the legislature consider giving this same authority to rural districts that the metro districts have. And so I think where I'm at, I see this and it makes sense. Superintendents are pushing. Let's have MSBA also go there with that message, because when MREA and MSBA come together, that sends a pretty loud message and they hear it. So, you know, and if we can get a few other organizations to also chip in, that's something that works out well, so. The teacher shortage. There's a lot of ideas out there. I think funding mentoring programs and like what we're doing for our teachers with instructional coaches, with mentoring for new teachers, that's the future to help teachers have that support as they begin their career, and then as they go through their career to help them continue to refine their practice and get better. This district, thank you to the board, is investing in our teachers and investing in these things. We're taking their staff development dollars for it, but it sure would be nice to have $75,000 to $100,000 to help offset those costs, so we don't have to pull it out of from some other areas, or we can add those dollars in other areas that you know, would be good. There's also some things about growing our own program, and just this morning I saw that there's a little bit of initiative in our district to begin recruiting high school students and talking to them about going into teaching. And so these types of things give maybe we can have some grants for that. I know Worthington's really doing something there. They've gotten together with Southwest State and Minnesota West, and I think they're lining up to try to get, you know, people into the teaching profession almost right out of high school. And granted, Worthington has some very unique challenges with 35, 40 languages and getting teachers of, you know, from these other cultures to be teachers. They have to take some different steps, so trying to support that and getting them into their schools is another thing that would be really good. I also mentioned grants for teacher candidates. This is really about student teaching and paying, the state paying people to be at there that last semester of student teaching, giving them a stipend to live on, because, I mean, when you are in college, that last, if you did have a job to support yourself, you probably have to give it up, because teaching's a full-time job, and when you start doing that as a student teacher, it's taxing on your time and energy, so it seems to be one of those things that is coming down that would make sense. There's some talk of funding mandating paid family medical leave. That could be quite a cost to the district. MREA is recommending that they delay implementation on that so we can get it into work agreements, and they'd like to see the state pick up that share or portion of that funding if that were to be, rather than the schools having to pay for that, because that could be quite a drain. Even though some of our employees can use their sick leave, it's just one of those things that needs to be talked a little bit about. Local control of sexual health curriculum. There's movements in the state to try to mandate sex ed curriculums that everyone's going to teach. And this is one of those where I think local school districts in their communities should be having these conversations and determining what do we want to talk about in that curriculum area, rather than having the state hand down decisions that require schools to do these things. And then finally, funding increase to cover special education costs. Mentioned our cross subsidy is about $700 per pupil, and at 1,100 pupils, that's about $800,000 a year that we have to use from the general fund to help with funding special ed. So anything they can do to help in that area, funding education, to be honest, however they want to give it to us. I'm seeing that people are asking for another 1% on the formula for next year. You know, however they do it is fine with me, but these were the 5 that I had. I don't know if you guys had any other topics or thoughts.
Anybody have anything they would like to have passed on?
You
They're
nailed
all
them.
good ideas.
Mhm.
They are. I'd like to see the funding inequity between outstate and metro close.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Jeff, there's an intermediate district that has 20,000 kids, and they get $65 for each kid to fund their special ed programs. Or a building, they can build brand new buildings with it. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
LTFM right now, I mean, there's even inequities there. Metro gets more in LTFM than we get.
Yeah.
They give them more authority. and it's starting to grow. All their levies are, have inflation increase, most of them they pass it. We do not pass it with inflationary increases, so we're sitting here for 10 years with our 1198. State average is now 1380, so we're, you know, even we're falling behind a little bit in that area, so it's, you know, I mean, they have talked about giving authority to boards to renew operating levies without going to a vote, and I'm still not sure on that. I mean, they show that 100% of them pass. I mean, there haven't been many that have been voted down, renewals.
Renewals.
It's the
No,
increases,
right.
you know, but, so they're starting to say, but I don't know, I still haven't quite gotten it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's good that we have communication about what we need money for,
Mhm.
why we need it. I don't know if we should be giving school boards, I've gone back to, and I've explained that one of the things with why the schools tax differently than the cities and the counties is that they wanted schools to be a community conversation. Everyone should be thinking about the kids and how do we provide best for them? So that's where levies and bonds are really good opportunities for communities to talk about what we need. You know, I think our bond, you know, that was good support from the community.
Yeah, so-
Operating levy renewal was good support from the community. Very close on the renewal. We didn't communicate well enough, but, you know, we're also made some adjustments in our budget.
Mhm.
We'll just see how things go here as we go forward, but.
Nobody has anything else? Do I have a motion to approve these 8.20, the MSBA delegate assembly recommendations? And we have Kevin forward that on for us.
So
So moved.
We have Katie and Marcy. Okay, any further discussion? Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passed. 8.21, approve snow removal quote for 2019-2020.
So moved.
Any further discussion?
We got one and they do a good job for us and they got the equipment, so
Yep.
no complaints at all.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes. 8.22, certify proposed levy limitation and certification report for 2019 payable 2020. And then we also need to set a date for truth and taxation meeting, which is tentative December 16, 2019 at 6 p.m.
Just, school district levies taxes on the school district, landowners and property owners. And this is the proposed levy. We need to send to the auditor so that we can begin the process, they can begin the process of calculating taxes. This is not approving any levies. This is just saying, we propose the maximum, and now we come back in December during the truth and taxation, and we determine what those levels, what we want to do, if we want to do the levy. What percentage. Jackie's broke down, as you can see, we have a lot of levies, a lot of local taxes. What it all comes down to in the end is about $3.5 million, $3.6 million in local taxes. They're gonna go up, according to the certification process, about 12.8%. And most of that is due to the passage of the bond for the elementary school. We use dollar amounts, but I mean, it was about a 10% increase. And of course, you know, that'll all work out. We've already kind of gone through that, so that's gonna have to happen there. There are a few others that, you know, what I would like to do is to have the Budget and Finance Committee kind of go through this a little more in-depthly. You can look at it if you have questions over the next few months. But really, that's kind of where things are at. The other increase is in our lease levy, and that's because we were able to use lease levy to fund some of the special education placements of our students. It was about $45,000 that would be levied through lease levy for special education costs. So, and that is we're we're spending $50,000 on a student. This is just saying we're gonna, 10,000 of it, we're gonna be able to do lease levy. It's not lowering costs or raising costs, it's just generating more revenue, new revenues for that. Other than that, I don't, most of these are just adjustments, aren't they, Jackie? I mean, there isn't any other changes in market values, changes in things that happen every year that are out of our control.
No.
Debt service and the lease levy are two areas that impact this the most.
Okay.
You also have the 40-page document that shows everything. We tried to trip up Melcher, but you couldn't. Jack, you couldn't.
No, when you tell me to start Bennett, I just shut up. That's all that work.
Okay, so do I have a motion to certify a proposed levy limitation? So moved. Brad, and do you have a percentage? Do we
I
have
want to
a
approve it for the maximum.
max?
Mhm.
Right.
Just the maximum.
Okay, I'll second that. And did you want to also make the motion to set the truth and taxation meeting at the same time?
Sure.
Okay. Got it.
First stated date and time.
Yep. Okay, so we have a first and a second on that. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of certifying maximum levy limitation and setting the truth and taxation meeting for December 16th at 6 PM, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
I don't know who has to sign it, but I have to go print it off my computer, so don't anyone leave right away.
The clerk.
Get it.
I've got it, I've got the budget amendment first.
Okay, we'll move on to 8.23, budget amendment. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Randy, I'll second. Any discussion? Jackie?
This is pretty simple. We hadn't received Title IV funding for quite a while, and then we did receive it last year. So when I was preparing the budget this June, I had no idea if we're gonna be getting it or not, so I didn't budget for it. So basically, you have to do a budget amendment anytime your overall total revenue increases or decreases as well as the expenditures. So this is just showing the revenue. I'm increasing the budget by the Title IV revenue, and I'm also increasing the expenditures by the same amount of revenue.
Okay. Any further discussion?
No, I'm gonna go grab that.
They are,
Who is?
the board.
What?
We're just giving her the authority.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay,
Well, however, yeah.
we have a first and second, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor of 8.23, budget amendment adjustment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, we'll move on to 8.24, approve resolution of school board supporting a grant application to the Minnesota State High School League Foundation to offset student activity fees.
Normally, I don't like these additions when they come in today, but this one is one of those that's pretty non-controversial. It's basically the state, the high school league has a fund to help, with the help fund that we have, Clay will be able to apply and get some dollars for those students who use the help fund, and we can replenish that fund with these dollars. So, recommend you approve.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Brad?
Second.
Amy? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Katie?
Second.
Randy? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.